3 words that save a Stark. Trial by combat. What if Ned Stark demanded a trial by combat? Instead of confessing on the steps of the Great Sept, what if 3 quiet words turned a public execution into the most dangerous duel in Westeros, and rewrote the War of the 5 Kings? This does not need to end in blood. But in truth, it always does. No Ned Stark stands on the scaffold with the sword of the Kingsguard at his back, and the eyes of the city on his broken body. Sansa is sobbing. Arya is lost in. The crowd. Cersei waits for the lie she forced him to speak, and the boy king leans forward, hungry for blood. Ned draws breath, feels the weight of the Sept and the statues of the 7, and chooses instead to look straight at Joffrey. The first demand trial. Sword strike, the room goes silent. Not just the High Septon and the lords on the balcony, but the gold cloaks, the small folk, the silent sisters. Even the Septons holding incense stare as if they misheard the condemned man of the North has just invoked the holiest and bloodiest escape clause in the faith's own laws against the crowned king of Westeros. Ned knows the rules. He saw them twisted in the veil when Tyrion Lannister turned a rigged trial into a duel for his life. Here the stakes are worse. One fight can override. Stacked court overturned a sentence already spoken. Force the gods themselves to judge even a king's whim. If this continues, Joffrey's command to kill him becomes a test of whether the Iron Throne still bows to law at all. Cersei's smile freezes. She understands at once if she denies the demand. She admits the trial was a farce, and hands Stannis every argument he needs to claim the throne. If she accepts, she risks the Lannister grip on power, on the edge of a single sword whose hand will hold it who will bleed for the man they named traitor, and who will dare to stand against the crown in open combat before half of King's Landing. This is the knife's edge we are going to walk in. This video we will build that. Trial blow by blow, from the first shocked breath in the Sept to the moment 2 champions step onto the floor. We will ask who can legally fight for Ned Stark. In the capital, Sir Barristan Selmy still in white armor. The Hound bound by oaths, not love even a desperate Lannister trying to prove his honor, and we will watch Cersei and her allies search for every way to twist the faith and the law, to keep control, and then we push past the duel. If Ned wins, does Robb ever need to march south? Does the Red Wedding happen at all? Or does a living Stark in King's Landing turn the war into something colder and more calculated? What happens when Stannis arrives to find not a city in flames, but a Stark regent on the throne? What does that mean for Daenerys and for the White Walkers moving slowly through the dark north, beyond anyone's sight? Stay with this moment on the scaffold, with the king's command hanging in the air. Because from here, one demand, one sword, one dead champion can break every plan Varys, Littlefinger and Tywin ever made, and the gods will not be silent about the price. On the steps of the Sept, Ned changes the script. The crowd does not breathe. Mercy, some cry, voices cracking in the heat. Others scream for blood, for the traitor's head, for the king to strike now. Sansa is on her knees, sobbing, hands clasped so tightly the knuckles have gone white as bone. Cersei's mouth is a hard, silent line, her eyes fixed on the kneeling Northman. Joffrey leans forward on the edge of his seat, smiling that small, cruel smile. My mother and the council, he announces, savoring each word, wish me to grant you mercy. We know this script. We have watched it before. The sun beats down on the white stone of the Great Sept's steps, turning every breath into a labor, turning sweat into a second skin. Ned Stark kneels with his hair matted to his brow, grey strands stuck to blood and dust, his broken leg shaking under him. The block is not there, but it does not need to be. Sir Island's sword is bare, the great steel catching the light, and the Kingsguard stand in a half-circle of polished death, blades glinting inches from his neck. But Joffrey's voice cuts through the roar. They have the soft hearts of women. His eyes glitter. So I shall do justice. In truth, this is the moment where Eddard Stark is meant to lower his head and accept the lie that will kill him. Instead, he moves. It is not graceful. It is not fast. He plants one hand on the hot stone and pushes. Bone grinds in his ruined leg. Black spots burst at the edge of his vision. A Kingsguard knight steps forward, sword lifting to strike, but Ned forces himself upright, not standing, not kneeling, a stubborn, shaking half-rise that freezes the entire square. The steps, the balconies, the doors of the sept, the room of the city gathered outside the faith's holiest place. The room goes silent. His voice is rough, scraped raw by pain and confession, but it carries. I am Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, hand of the late king. He drags in one more breath, and I claim my right. Trial by combat. The words fall like stones into still water. There is a beat where no one understands what they have heard. Then the murmur starts, slowly at first, then swelling, rolling through the crowd. Trial by combat. Divine judgment. The gods will decide. If this continues, this one demand might tear the day out of Cersei's hands. The High Septon jolts as if struck. This was meant to be a spectacle, not a proceeding. His eyes dart from Ned to Joffrey to the Queen, sweat beading under the weight of his crystal crown. Grand Maester Pycelle actually fumbles his chain, fingers plucking at the links as he stammers about precedent, about nobles and the faith and the rights even a confessed traitor still holds. Cersei's gaze narrows. She sees it faster than the rest. Trial by combat does not only weigh Ned, it weighs Joffrey. It weighs their claim, their king, before the eyes of gods and men. This does not need to end in blood. She wants to say, to pull them back to the script she prepared. But the words will not come. The small folk are already chanting, hungry for a duel, for a clean strike that proves the gods' favor. Joffrey had come to play at being a merciful king. Now he is something else. A boy monarch caught in a snare of law and faith. The camera lingers on his face as the noise surges around him, as he realizes his public execution has become a public test of his crown, and the next words from his mouth will decide who bleeds for it. The inciting divergence. Law, gods, and a cornered lioness. The boy king's lips part, but before any sound comes, Ned's voice cuts through the chaos. It is rough, low, carrying despite the distance, and the blood drying on his neck. He asks for judgment by the gods. He demands trial by combat. For a heartbeat, the room goes silent. Then the words ripple outward, carried by whispers, by gasps, by the sharp intake of breath from men who know what this means. Trial by combat is not some northern custom Ned drags south with his sword and his stubborn honor. It is baked into the faith of the Seven itself, the same sacred law that once let Tyrion Lannister escape the Eyrie on the edge of a sellsword's blade. In King's Landing, that right still stands, in theory. Any highborn accused of a mortal crime may call for the gods to decide, steel against steel, and no king or queen is meant to gainsay it without spitting in the face of the faith. The throne can stack the odds, pick a monster like the Mountain, try to make the outcome a foregone conclusion, but it cannot simply laugh and walk away. And that is the knife Ned twists now. He is no son of the Seven. He prays to heart trees and silent forests, to old, nameless spirits in the snow. Yet here, before the Septon and the crowd and the carved images of the Seven themselves, he invokes their rules, their language, turning the South's own traditions into a shield. In truth, he is using Cersei's world against her. Eyes swing to the High Septon. He hesitates. Sweat beads under his heavy crown of crystal and gold as he looks from Ned's broken form to the Iron Throne, to the boy perched on it with his mother's hand tight on his arm. If he denies a sacred rite in front of half the city, in front of knights and small folk and the warrior's own statue looming over them, what happens to the faith's authority tomorrow? On the edge of the crowd, Varys watches, soft hands folded, face unreadable. Littlefinger's gaze flickers, calculating, already weighing which outcome bleeds Lannister power fastest and which leaves him with the fattest purse. If this continues, either the crown bends to a northern traitor's demand, or it risks a very public quarrel with the gods. Cersei feels the trap closing. If she blocks the demand, she risks turning the High Septon against her, risks the sept doors bursting with angry smallfolk who think their king has mocked a holy promise. If she allows it, she stakes Joffrey's fragile crown on a single fight, on one knight and one sword, with all of Westeros watching to see whom the gods favor. This does not need to end in blood, she hisses, but she knows that is a lie. Blood has already been spilled. More will follow. Slowly she leans to Joffrey, nails biting into his sleeve, dragging him down from the cold height of the throne for a hurried whisper. Around them, the sept hums with confused murmurs as every breath hangs on what the boy king will choose. Honor an ancient custom, or defy it and dare the gods to strike back. Arguing with the gods, can the crown say no? Joffrey jerks his arm from her grip. They dare defy me? His voice cracks, too high for a king. But he drags in a breath and lifts his chin as the High Septon shuffles closer through the flickering light of the candles. Your Grace, the old man wheezes, fat rings glinting as he folds his hands. The man has named the gods. Trial by combat is his right. The room goes silent for a heartbeat, the sound of the crowd outside seeping in as a dull roar, like distant surf against stone. Cersei straightens slowly, eyes hard. He is a confessed traitor, she says, each word a cold strike. Mercy was offered, he spat on it. Treason against the king is not some tavern brawl to be settled with a sword and a prayer. The crown will not be chained by old superstitions. Pycelle hobbles forward, blinking, beard trembling. If it pleases your grace, he begins, already sweating. There is precedent. Even traitors of high birth have called upon the gods in this way. Prince Aerys's hand, Lord Darklyn, demanded such in the defiance of Duskendale. Sir Lucamore Strong, a Kingsguard, sought it when his vows were found wanting. To deny the right, and here in the Great Sept, would be seen as an open break with the faith's ancient customs. The small folk are watchful, your grace. If this continues, there may be unrest. In truth, they are already restless. Varys murmurs from behind them, his soft voice barely above the whisper of robes. They have seen their beloved hand dragged in chains. They have heard him call upon the gods. The realm prefers the appearance of justice, if not always its substance. His eyes never quite meet Cersei's, but she feels the warning all the same. Littlefinger stands at Joffrey's other side, fingers resting lightly on the boy's arm, as if steadying him. And yet, he says, almost idly, a trial by combat need not trouble your grace. The king chooses his own champion. Pick the right knight, the right mountain of a man, and the outcome is certain. The people see piety. You see your enemy fall. Everyone breathes easier. Cersei turns on him. And if the gods favor the wolf, she snaps. If this northerner's madness spreads, If every rebel lord thinks he can brandish a sword and claim the gods' favor, this does not need to end in blood. The High Septon interrupts, sweat beading on his brow. Should the king's champion prevail, Lord Stark's guilt is beyond question. The North will have no righteous cause to howl for war. Patton snaps. For a moment, Joffrey hears only that. No righteous cause, and it tempts him. No war. No fear of Robb Stark marching south with howling banners. Then he remembers something else. The way the crowd screamed when Sir Elin took a man's head last moon turn. The way blood steamed on cold air. Joffrey smiles. He rises, pulling free of Cersei's grasp, turning to face the gathered lords, septons, and gold cloaks. Very well, he declares, voice ringing against marble and crystal. Let the gods decide. He spreads his arms wide, hungry for their eyes. The traitor shall have his trial by combat. I will name a champion, and all shall see the gods favor their king. The sept erupts. Some shout in wild approval, some in fear, but the sound slams into the vaulted ceiling all the same. The room goes silent only in Cersei's head as she stares at her son, her face a frozen mask, while her mind races, calculating which sword will make certain the gods never hear Ned Stark's prayers. Outside, word is already racing through King's Landing. Inside, the first names for champions are already being whispered. Choosing swords, who fights for the crown and for Ned, whispers harden into names before the echo of Joffrey's command has faded. Trial by combat. 2 swords, 1 verdict. The rule itself is simple enough that even the small folk in the galleries understand it. The accused names a champion. The accuser does the same. The gods decide whose strike lands true. But here the accuser is not a single man. It is the Iron Throne, the crown, the boy who calls himself king. That means the royal household will choose who fights in Joffrey's name, and every eye in the room slowly turns toward the deadliest blades within reach. Gregor Clegane is the first whispered answer. The Mountain, a towering brute, already soaked in Riverland's blood. Half armor, half slaughter made flesh. As a weapon, he is perfect. Terrifying, unstoppable. A blunt instrument that sends a message to every lord watching. But in truth, he is also wildfire on 2 legs. Unpredictable, hard to aim. If this continues into some larger storm, tying the king's justice so openly to a notorious butcher could stain Joffrey's rule before it has even begun. Sandor Clegane stands closer to the throne. The Hound, sworn to the king's service, proven in melee and in murder. Unlike his brother, he obeys orders, and his fear of fire does not matter in a clean duel of steel. Naming him would show strength without quite so much madness. Yet Cersei's eyes flick once towards Sir Loras Tyrell, gleaming in his pretty armor. Loras is young, famous, beloved by the small folk, and bound to a powerful house the Lannisters still hope to woo. Choosing him would be showy, a pageant of chivalry instead of a quiet execution. But it would also give the Tyrells leverage over the crown's justice, and Cersei does not share power if she can help it. On the other side of this silent calculation stands Ned Stark, breathing shallowly, leg throbbing, knowing he cannot lift a sword long enough to save himself. He thinks, for one wild heartbeat, of Robert, of the man who once smashed princes with a single hammer blow. But Robert lies cold in his stone bed. Jaime Lannister, another obvious choice, is already a captive in Robb's camp by the time these torches burn. The Kingslayer cannot be called to defend the man he betrayed, so who is left? Barristan Selmy, dismissed and humiliated, yet still in the city. still a knight whose very name is a prayer for victory. Sandor himself, who could be named against his will, bound by law even if his soul rebels. Perhaps some hard northern retainer or sellsword. A quiet man-at-arms who followed Ned south and has been hiding in the crush of the capital, waiting for a chance to draw his sword for the right king. The room goes silent in Ned's mind as he measures each life. This does not need to end in blood, he had once told Cersei, but the gods demand it now. If the gods are watching, who can he trust with his breath in a city of enemies? And who would dare accept that burden, knowing one wrong strike makes them traitor to the crown? The first volunteer is about to step forward. The Barristan Gambit, an old knight's last oath. The first volunteer is not some nameless sellsword. It is the old knight they all tried to cast aside. Barristan Selmy remembers another room, another throne, another boy king smirking as Cersei's voice cut like a sword. You are relieved of your duties. His white cloak on the floor, his honor stripped in front of courtiers who did not dare meet his eyes. Joffrey calling for his hide, Cersei smiling as if she had slain a dragon. That day, the room goes silent in his memory, not from respect, but from fear. He had served 3 kings. He had watched one burn men for sport, another drink himself into an early grave, a third preen on stolen steel. In truth, he had stayed because someone had to remember what a king ought to be. When they dismissed him, they did not just cast out an old knight. They told the realm that honor was no longer welcome near the Iron Throne. Now, in the Sept, he stands among the King's Guard, like a ghost who has not yet realized he is dead. Ned's words hang in the air, that demand for trial by combat, that old right the faith once used to drag truth out of liars and cowards. The High Septon, sweating beneath crystal-crowned and heavy robes, croaks the formal invocation. Let the gods decide. Let steel and courage be the prayer. Barristan hears the murmurs, feels the way every breath in the hall slowly tightens. This is supposed to be a spectacle, a holy mask over a foregone execution. Cersei wants the North broken. Joffrey wants blood. The small council wants Ned Stark's head to warn the realm. If this continues as planned, the gods will be nothing but a name they spit between lies. The High Septon's voice cracks. If there is any knight of the realm who will stand as champion for Lord Eddard Stark, let him speak now. Silence. Not peaceful, but sharp. Gold cloaks shift, hands on sword hilts. Lords avert their eyes. No one wants to be seen weighing their life against the Queen's displeasure. Even the Hound, who fears little, watches the dais instead of the prisoner. The room goes silent in truth this time, as if the whole city is holding its breath. Barristan steps forward. Armor clinks, quiet but final. Cersei's eyes snap to him, green and cold. Joffrey's mouth falls open. For a heartbeat, no one moves, as if an old statue has come to life and started walking toward the altar. I will stand, Barristan says, voice steady, for Eddard Stark. For the honor of the king who was Robert Baratheon. He does not look at Joffrey when he says king. He does not need to. Every man in the room hears the choice. Robert, who trusted him. Robert, who laughed with him, who bled honestly on the trident. Not this boy who orders singers beaten and wants to watch a man's neck part for sport. In his heart, Barristan is not choosing a person. He is choosing between 2 visions of the throne. One where the law is a costume, one where even a dishonored knight can still believe the gods might answer a straight question. If the gods favor Joffrey, let them prove it. If they favor the Northmen, then let this rotten court choke on the verdict. He kneels before the altar, not before the boy on the throne. Before the seven, I, Sir Barristan Selmy, do swear to be champion to Lord Eddard Stark. The words cannot be unsaid now. In front of the faith, before half the city, he has tied his fate to Ned's. Cersei must answer. She must find a sword terrifying enough to face the greatest living knight of Westeros, or admit that even her crown bends before an old man's last oath. And the champion she chooses will decide far more than one man's life. Cersei's counter. Unleashing the mountain for a heartbeat, Cersei says nothing, and it feels like the whole sept is holding its breath, waiting to see which monster the queen will unleash against the last true knight in white. Then Joffrey snaps first. Mother. Name someone. Make him fight. His voice cracks high and sharp, but it cuts through the murmur like a sword. The room goes silent as every pair of eyes turns to the Iron Throne's boy king and the woman standing just below him. There are choices, safer choices. The Hound stands near the Kingsguard, helm under one arm, scarred face unreadable as he watches Barristan. Cersei's gaze flicks to him, just for a moment. Sandor Clegane is deadly, everyone knows that, but he is also dangerous in ways she cannot predict. A man who walks away from burning men and cries out that this does not need to end in blood even as he cuts them down. He is not a sword she can aim without worrying about where it might strike. Loras Tyrell is another path. Young, famed internees wrapped in flowers and songs and tied to a reach alliance she is not ready to spend. To name him would be to put Highgarden's golden boy in the hands of an old lion and an old wolf. If he falls, she offends Mace. If he wins, she owes the Tyrells. Either way, her power bends. So she looks past them, past doubt, past appearances, past the faith's painted statues and the High Septon's soft, worried eyes. In truth, she wants fear. She wants the city to feel the weight of the crown in their bones. Her gaze finds Sir Gregor Clegane. He looms among the Lannister men, like a siege tower wrapped in steel. Helm tucked under one huge arm, scarred hands resting near the sword that has burned the Riverlands. Whispers ripple through the sept as people follow her eyes. They remember tales of burned fields and butchered small folk, of children nailed to doors along the Red Fork. Tywin Lannister is not here, but his shadow seems to grow longer the moment his mad dog is named in every low voice. Cersei raises her chin. For the king, she says slowly, Sir Gregor Clegane will answer Sir Barristan's challenge. The High Septon actually flinches. His fingers tighten on his crystal staff, knuckles white, as if he can feel the gods recoiling from the idea of their judgment carried out by this butcher. Yet he nods, because if this continues, the faith must pretend the gods are blind to such things. The duel takes on a shape the whole city can understand. On one side, Barristan Selmy, last of the old Kingsguard, a knight out of half-forgotten songs, all vows and quiet honor. On the other, Gregor, the crown's raw violence made flesh, the Lannister fist closing around the realm, a man who solves every problem with blood and fire. Cersei is already calculating. If Gregor crushes Barristan, if he grinds that white cloak into the marble, she will stand before the people and say the gods themselves chose Joffrey. And if the unthinkable happens, if the mountain falls, she will scream of poison, of treachery, of northern sorcery, anything to stain the verdict and buy time. Day and hour are named. The faith announces it in a trembling voice that echoes from the mother's altar to the great doors. As the crowd spills out into the streets, word races ahead of them. They will see a living legend fight a living nightmare. Barristan and Gregor remain, facing one another across the sept's cold floor, white cloak and dark plate. Quiet breath and rasping growl, each measuring the other in absolute, silent focus. Somewhere in that stillness, Ned Stark realizes that the war for his life has just become the war for the whole realm, and that the first true strike has not yet been thrown. A stay of execution. War paused on a knife's edge. The stillness does not last. Ned is taken from the sept before dawn, chains clinking softly as gold cloaks and white cloaks form a wall of steel around him. Swords bare, eyes hard. He is not dragged to the steps of Baelor this time, but down, beneath the Red Keep, to a cell watched by twice the usual guard, where even the torchlight feels cold. Above him, King's Landing wakes slowly to a different kind of terror. Word moves faster than any rider. By noon, the city is buzzing that the traitor Stark has called on the gods to judge him, that a single strike will decide his guilt, that the mountain will face the old wolf under holy eyes. Ravens fly in every direction, black wings beating against grey skies, carrying one simple explosive message. Eddard Stark's fate will be decided by trial, by combat. In the north, that changes everything. Robb Stark does not hear of his father's death on the march. Instead, as his host pushes through the neck, wet and weary, a raven finds him in a crowded command tent, where the room goes silent as the letter is broken. Ned lives. Condemned, yes, but not yet executed. His life hangs on a jewel in King's Landing. The young wolf feels the breath leave his chest and then return, sharper, colder. The Northern Lords are still furious, still speaking of Lannister blood and southern arrogance. But now there is a narrow bridge across the abyss. If this continues to a clean victory in the capital, if Ned is declared innocent under the gods, then marching straight for vengeance becomes something else, marching to leverage a living lord of Winterfell. Even the Great Jon, who wants Gregor's head on a spike, has to admit that a father saved is worth a war slowed. So, Robb adjusts. He still rides for the Riverlands, still answers Tully calls for aid, but he sends more scouts, takes fewer reckless crossings, waits on certain engagements. In truth, he is buying days for one old knight and one monster to decide the weight of every northern sword. Far to the southwest, in Tywin Lannister's camp, the news cuts in a different way. Tywin is furious that Gregor has been dragged into the light, that his bluntest instrument now stands beneath septon chants and prying noble eyes. Yet he also sees the opening. If the mountain crushes Barristan under the gaze of the Seven, the Lannisters gain something priceless. Divine proof, or what can be sold as such, that the king's judgment was just. His letters to the capital are sharp, demanding control of the message, demanding that Pycelle and Cersei make certain the story is told correctly. And beyond them, other claimants watch. Renly in Highgarden hears that Ned Stark still breathes and quietly delays his own crown. A Stark alive in Lannister hands means the North is not yet fully loosed, not yet desperate enough to back any southern king. Stannis on Dragonstone reads the same line 3 times, jaw clenched. A living Ned complicates everything. The lawful North may sit, for a time, between his rightful claim and open war. The realm seems to hold its breath. Armies pause on roads, ravens wheel over keeps, maesters hover over maps that suddenly feel provisional. Plots that were meant to move at once now creep, waiting on the outcome in King's Landing, because everyone can see the shape of it. If Barristan falls and Gregor stands bloody but victorious, the Lannisters will shout that the gods themselves have spoken, that this does not need to end in blood if the rebels only bend the knee. If Barristan wins, if the mountain breaks and the lie of Joffrey's justice cracks with him, then every restrained sword in the realm will come screaming out of its scabbard. Either way, everything narrows to that cold floor in the sept, to one duel that will either ignite Westeros or smother it, for a moment under a crown blessed by fear and faith. Dawn at the Great Sept. Stage set for divine judgment, dawn comes with bells. They start as a distant peal over the city, then roll closer, heavier, until each toll feels like a hammer on the ribs of King's Landing. The small folk answer that call. They pour up the hill in ragged streams, filling the steps of the Great Sept, pressing against spears as banners snap in the cold wind. Lannister crimson, Baratheon gold, the seven-pointed star. The holiest place in the capital slowly twists into something else, into an arena built for blood. Inside, the marble floor has been cleared. No pews, no kneelers, only a wide pale circle, ringed by armored men. Gold cloaks stand shoulder to shoulder with white cloaks, a wall of steel between the watching crowd and the space where two men will strike until one no longer draws breath. The air is thick with incense and fear. Voices drop low. The closer they get to the hour, the more the room goes silent. In a side chamber, Barristan Selmy fastens the last buckle on his breastplate. No white cloak today, only plain steel and the weight of a sword older than most men in the hall. His hands move slowly, but without a tremor, each strap drawn tight with the same care he once gave Robert's armor, the same care he gave Aerys before the fire. He breathes in, breathes out, shutting out the shuffle of acolytes and the murmured prayers. In truth, he knows one slip, one stumble on that polished floor, and Eddard Stark dies a traitor in the eyes of this new king. He kneels for a heartbeat, not to the seven, not fully, but to the idea that somewhere beyond stone and smoke there is still a thing called honor. Then he rises when the door opens. The mountain arrives like a storm given shape. Heavy footfalls echo down the nave before he is seen, each step ringing through the sept as his blackened armor scrapes and clanks. Gregor Clegane's greatsword rests across his shoulder, the blade so broad it looks like it could split the marble itself. The crowd recoils as he passes, faces turning away, then back again, unable to look elsewhere. Mothers pull children behind them. Men who have seen war stare at his hands and remember stories of what those hands have done. On the high dais, Cersei leans close to Joffrey. Her voice is low, her eyes sharp as any dagger. She tells him to sit straight, to watch without blinking, to show no doubt. If this continues, if even a flicker of fear crosses his face, the tale these people carry back to the alleys will be that their king is a frightened boy hiding behind a monster. Sansa stands not far away, fingers white on the rail. Her lips move in silent prayer, half to the seven, half to the mother in Winterfell who taught her different gods. Ned is somewhere below, ringed by guards, his sword taken, his grey eyes fixed on the circle of stone where his fate will be decided. Varys and Littlefinger stand in the shadows of a pillar. Patyr smiles faintly, watching the crowd instead of the fighter's space. "Well," he murmurs, "let the gods sort liars from fools." Varys's answer is softer, almost a sigh. "If the gods spoke through steel, my lord, King's Landing would be a very quiet city." The High Septon shuffles forward, jewels flashing in the pale light. He raises both hands. Incense swirls. For a moment, even the bells seem to fade. The hall falls utterly still as he calls on the Father for justice, the warrior for strength, the stranger for mercy in death. His final words carry to every corner of the room. Today the seven will speak through steel. The victor shall reveal the truth of treason and of kingship. Let the champions come forth. Then, with all of Westeros balanced on that empty circle of stone, Barristan Selmy steps out to meet the mountain. Steel and marble, opening blows of the trial by combat steel meets stone first. Barristan comes on the balls of his feet, sword low, shield high, circling as he has 1,000 times in practice yards from King's Landing to Dawn. Across from him, the mountain advances slowly, each step a dull thud through the marble, great sword held in a brutal two-handed guard, the blade already angled to split a man from crown to groin. Between them the sept's light spills down in pale shafts, turning dust motes to drifting ghosts. They close. No signal, no call, only the room goes silent as the first test of distance begins. Barristan flicks a feint at the helm, the steel whispering past Gregor's eyes, then snaps a real cut at the right flank, forcing the larger man to turn. Sword, step, pivot, breath. He works the outside line, trying to make that massive frame keep moving, trying to feel the exact reach of that monstrous blade without letting it taste his blood. Gregor answers with contempt. He does not chase. He turns like a siege tower, slow but inexorable. And when he swings the great sword, it comes in a wide, crushing arc that howls through the air. The impact on Barristan's shield is like a hammer on a bell. The old knight's arm jolts numb to the elbow, the blow ringing off the sept's domes so hard dust trickles from the high arches. Marble chips fly where the edge bites the floor, white stone flaking like bone. Again. Barristan slashes at the thigh, at the gap behind the knee, testing, never lingering. Again, the mountain answers with raw power, each strike driving him back a step, then another, until his heel scrapes the painted ring of the combat circle. If this continues, the Watchers realize the smaller man will simply be battered apart. In truth, even Barristan feels it. The creeping weight in his shield arm, the way his breath starts to rasp in his throat. Gregor lunges, not a wild swing now, but a sudden, brutal half-step and thrust, the point angling for Barristan's chest. Selmy twists, shield turning, sword checking the inside line, but the greatsword slams into his helm as it glances past. Steel screeches on steel. His world flares white. He staggers. The room sways. Blood beads at his temple and runs down into one eye, blurring the mountain into a red-rimmed shadow. The crowd gasps as one, a single torn sound beneath the sept's vaults. Somewhere Joffrey shouts something shrill and wordless. Somewhere Cersei's breath catches, her fingers digging into the arm of the king's chair. Barristan does not fall. He drops his weight, resets his stance, forces his legs to obey. One slow blink clears his vision enough to see the next strike coming. Another murderous horizontal cut meant to take his head. He ducks under it by inches, feels the wind of the blade tug at his hair, feels the stone shudder as the greatsword carves a furrow in the marble behind him. Then he answers. He steps inside the recovery, shield smashing forward to jam Gregor's hands, sword snapping down in a tight, economical arc. Edge meets the gap between vambrace and gauntlet and bites. There is a flash of bright blood against grey steel, a hiss from the mountain that is almost an inhuman growl. For the first time, Gregor Clegane is marked. The sept erupts in a roar, then cuts off as if a hand closed around a throat. The realm sees that this does not need to end in blood spilled only one way. Barristan's eyes are clear now, fixed, cold. He has drawn first blood from the king's chosen monster. And as Gregor slowly looks down at the wound on his sword arm, then back up with murder burning behind his visor, Every soul in that room understands the next exchange may decide more than a single man's guilt. Honor versus monstrosity. Momentum swings, and near deaths, Gregor moves first. He does not roar, he does not taunt. He simply steps in, and the world narrows to steel and stone. He drives his bulk forward, using the full weight of his armor like a ram, forcing Barristan back toward the nearest pillar. Each blow of that greatsword crashes down, ringing against shield and blade. And when Barristan slips aside, one strike glances off the marble itself, splintering it, sending white shards skittering across the floor. The room goes silent again, as everyone realizes this is no graceful tourney-bout. Barristan feels each impact in his bones, his shield arm numbing, his breath coming shorter. He cannot meet that strength head-on, not for long. So he starts to give ground in a way that looks like panic, but in truth is measured, controlled. He angles his steps, lets Gregor herd him, lets the mountain think he is winning the corner. Gregor follows, slow and relentless, cutting off angles with his sheer size, sword sweeping, shield smashing, driving the older knight between two pillars. Stone dust drifts from fresh cracks where the greatsword has bitten deep. Barristan rolls his shoulders with each hit, twisting at the last instant so the force slides off his guard instead of taking him full. He feels age in every joint, but his eyes stay clear. He starts to answer, not with wild swings, but with quick, spiteful strikes at the places Gregor's armor is weakest. The back of a knee as the mountain oversteps, the leather at an elbow when that huge shield comes too far across, the thin mail at the groin when Gregor plants too heavily. Steel rings, sparks jump, and while most blows skid off plate, a few find purchase, drawing thin lines of blood that vanish beneath darkened steel. If this continues, Gregor will bleed out by inches. Gregor seems to realize it. He changes. Instead of chasing, he traps. He slams forward, smashing Barristan's shield aside with his own, then hooks the rim with the greatsword and wrenches down. The old man's arm screams. His knees buckle, and suddenly he is on one knee with his shield pinned against the cracked marble, his sword arm stretched and straining. The greatsword rises. For a heartbeat, there is only the sound of Barristan's breath and the faint creak of leather. Sansa cries out, wordless, her hands flying to her mouth. Cersei's fingers dig into the armrest of the Iron Throne until her knuckles go white, while Joffrey leans forward like a boy at a bear pit, eyes wide, hungry for blood. The High Septon stares down, lips moving in a silent prayer as brute strength seems to crush all pretense of divine justice. The blade falls. Barristan twists. He lets the shield go, ripping his arm free as the greatsword slams through oak and iron and into the floor, biting so deep into marble that chips sting his cheek. It stops inches from his exposed neck. In that same motion, he surges inside Gregor's guard. No shield now, only speed and memory. His sword hilt crashes up under the rim of Gregor's helm, a vicious pommel strike that snaps the mountain's head back with a dull, ugly sound. Before Gregor can fully recoil, Barristan rams his blade in low, not at the breastplate, but at the gap behind the massive cuisses, driving cold steel into the meat of the thigh. Gregor snarls, staggers, one leg suddenly weaker, his balance broken. The rhythm shifts. The monster is slower now, and as Barristan steps back, chest heaving, sword red at the tip, every eye in the room understands that the old knight has just stolen the fight back from the very edge of death. Blood on the floor. The fight turns desperate. Gregor adjusts, weight shifting to spare the wounded leg, and for a heartbeat the room goes silent again as everyone realizes the mountain is not done yet. His sword comes up in a brutal guard, shoulders rolling, breath rasping inside the dented helm like a bellows gone mad. Barristan feels it all. The drag of his own limbs, the hot sting where a glancing blow split the mail at his ribs, the way his armor now pulls slightly to the left where the breastplate is caved in. Each breath is a labor. Each step has to be placed carefully on shattered marble dusted with blood, because one slip here is death, not only for him, but for the cause Ned Stark has staked on his old knight's body. Gregor moves first. A sweeping strike that howls through the air, smashes into a pillar when Barristan is already gone, stone exploding, chips skittering across the floor. The sept is no longer sacred. It is a broken jaw of pillars and torn tapestries, the stranger's face above them half-shadowed, watching. Barristan circles, sword low, eyes never leaving the mountain's stance, noting how that injured leg drags, how the big man's balance lists for a fraction of a second after every heavy blow. He murmurs under his breath as he moves, not loud, not for the crowd, but for himself and for the Seven. A snatch of an old prayer from the Kingsguard cloister, a vow he once swore before another king's bed. In truth, it sounds more like a promise to himself than to any god. If this continues, he knows his age will tell. He has to end it before his strength runs dry. Gregor hears the whispering, and it only feeds his rage. The old man will not fall. Every cut on his arms, every line of blood seeping through the gaps of his armor, every stagger of that bad leg is an insult. He snarls, drives forward, sword hacking, shield battering, trying to crush Barristan under sheer fury. One blow catches the edge of Barristan's blade just wrong. Steel twists, his fingers flare with pain, and the sword almost flies from his grasp. For a heartbeat, the world narrows. Barristan's hand is open, the hilt half slipping, Gregor's shadow falling over him. Then he clamps down, knuckles white, pivots, and Gregor's own boot skids out from under him on the pool of blood spreading from his wounded thigh. The mountain lurches. He drops to one knee with a crash that shakes the cracked floor. Barristan lunges, trying to drive his sword down into the gap at the collar, but Gregor's arm snaps up with brutal speed. Steel meets steel, blades locking, faces inches apart. Barristan smells sour breath and old wine inside the helm. Gregor can see the lines at the corners of the knight's eyes, the strain, the refusal. This does not need to end in blood, Barristan grates out, though both of them know it already has. Gregor laughs, a harsh, broken sound, and heaves. The lock breaks. Barristan is thrown back, skidding on broken marble, shoulder slamming into a ruined pillar. They separate. For the first time in the fight, there is real distance between them, more than a sword's length. Just two battered figures amid a field of shattered stone and red streaks. Barristan's armor hangs dented and stained, his breathing loud but steady. Gregor's plates gleam wet and dark, blood running down his greaves, that bad leg trembling with every shift of weight. Somewhere above, the High Septon's voice quavers through the stunned murmur of the crowd, barely audible. He begs the Seven to reveal their will in one final clash. All eyes turn back to the two men, both chests heaving, both knowing the next exchange will decide not only who walks out of this ruined sept, but which king this city will have to kneel to when the swords finally fall silent. The gods decide. One stroke, one fallen giant Gregor moves first. He throws his head back and roars, a raw animal sound that drowns the last of the High Septon's trembling prayer. Then he charges. The mountain does not faint, does not circle. He simply comes on like a falling tower, sword rising in a brutal arc above his helm. This is not a cut meant to wound. This is an all-or-nothing strike, meant to split an old knight from crown to breastbone, and paint the sept in blood. Barristan watches that sword climb, slowly. Inevitably, his own arms feel carved from stone, his breath ragged in his ears, his eyes burning with sweat and age and stubborn pride. In truth, he has nothing left to trade but experience. Gregor's shoulders bunch, his hips turn, the blow telegraphed in every line of his massive frame, promising that if this continues for even one more heartbeat, something in this room will break forever. The mountain's blade comes down. Barristan does not meet it. He is no brute. He is the last of the King's Guard in more than name. At the final instant, he steps just off the line of that terrible strike, boots scraping marble, cloak snapping behind him as the sword howls past his shoulder close enough to kiss his hair. Steel slams into stone with a shriek, chips of white rock exploding, Gregor's full weight thrown forward by his own fury. That is the gap. Barristan turns with the motion, not against it, feeling the drag of age in his spine, the protest in his knees, and he ignores all of it. His own sword drives in low and hard, not for plate, not for spectacle, but for the thin place he has been waiting for since the first clash. He rams the point up beneath Gregor's outstretched arm, into the joint where metal gapes and mail is weakest, burying good steel deep into meat. The sound is wet and ugly. Blood erupts in a dark spray across the white marble and the shattered steps of the altar. Gregor's sword tears free of the floor, only to tumble from his fingers, crashing harmlessly beside Barristan's feet. For a heartbeat, the mountain just stands there, huge and silent, as if the gods themselves have reached down and pressed a hand to his throat. Then the room goes silent. Every king, every lord, every small folk crammed between the pillars holds their breath as Gregor staggers. One step, another. His knees buckle. The great helm tilts toward the candles, then toward the floor, and he drops to one knee like a man taking the black, gauntlets clawing at the air. Armor clatters, plates grinding, and then the giant falls full length with a seismic thud that makes dust drift from the mother's carved face. Sir Gregor Clegane does not rise. Barristan sways over him, sword dripping, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the corpse, as if expecting it to move again. It does not. The High Septon's voice breaks the hush at last, thin but carrying, riding the charged air. By the judgment of the Seven, he declares, each word a hammer blow in the stunned sept. Eddard Stark is innocent of treason in the eyes of the gods. The words detonate. Cersei's face drains of colour. Joffrey lurches to his feet. Lords shout. Small folk scream. Steel scrapes from scabbards as the crowd erupts around the fallen mountain and the bloodied night. And as the roar rises, Ned Stark feels every eye swing toward him, toward the man the gods have just spared, and realizes this does not need to end in blood, unless he chooses how that next moment falls. Because the gods have spoken, but the kings have not yet. A king humiliated, Cersei, Joffrey, and the first fallout, the roar, does not fade. It twists, it curdles, and on the Iron Throne, Cersei Lannister feels something she has not felt in years. Naked, public humiliation. Her son's champion lies broken, her chosen monster dragged away in chains, and the High Septon's thin voice has just told the realm that Eddard Stark stands innocent in the eyes of the Seven. For a heartbeat, the room goes silent, and in that silence, Cersei feels every gaze cutting her more sharply than any sword. Her smile cracks. Her eyes flash. This was meant to be their stage, their justice, their blood. Then Joffrey moves. The young king lurches to his feet, face flushed and twisted, breath coming fast as he stares down at Ned. He wanted a spectacle, a clean strike that proved his power to the court and to the small folk pressed against the pillars. Instead, he has been rebuked by gods and crowd alike, his mercy made to look like weakness, his sentence overturned. He does not understand the law, only that the story in his head has been stolen. "I am the king," he snaps, voice cracking across the hall. "I can do as I please. Bring him back. I'll have his head yet." The words hang there, thick as smoke. A few gold cloaks shift. One knight half raises his sword. If this continues, the blood will wash from the steps all the way to the doors. Varys is the first to move, gliding forward, soft hands spread. "Your Grace," he murmurs. "In truth, the eyes of the city are upon you. The gods have spoken. To press further now would trouble the faith." Littlefinger is at the base of the throne already, smiling that slow, poisonous smile, whispering about optics, about riots, about how even a king cannot be seen spitting in the face of the Seven. The High Septon seizes that opening. Shaking, yet suddenly strong, he steps out where all can see him. "To defy this verdict," he says, each word a labor, "is to defy the Seven themselves. The faith stands with the king, so long as the king stands with the gods." The room goes silent again. Cersei hears it for what it is, a threat. Their moral authority, the story she spun of Stark treason and Lannister righteousness, has been torn open before the court. She slowly schools her features, fingers white on the arm of the throne. Rage burns in her blood, but she swallows it, because she can feel power slipping, and she will not let it fall. House arrest, she thinks. Terms of release. A northern wolf in a southern cage. If Ned Stark cannot be a traitor's corpse, he can be a living hostage. Varys is already there in his mind, weighing roots and ravens, seeing how a breathing Ned might cool the North's fury without freeing it. Littlefinger sees coin and chaos, murmuring that Stark honor can be used. Bent, never quite broken. "Keep him close," he suggests lightly. Close. And helpless. Ned is led away, alive but not free, wrists bound, boots scraping on stone. Sansa breaks from the line, reaching for him with shaking hands before a Lannister guard shoves her back, her cry lost in the clamour. Cersei watches father and daughter both, eyes narrowed, already stitching a new story over this divine defeat. This does not need to end in blood, she tells herself, so long as it does not end in Stark victory. And as the doors close on Ned Stark, the real war for what his survival means is only beginning. No war yet. How a living Ned reshapes the North. Word of Ned's survival rides north faster than any raven. Robb is in the Great Hall at Winterfell when Maester Luwin finishes reading, the parchment shaking slightly between his fingers. Ned Stark lives. Declared innocent by trial of the sword, yet still a captive of the Iron Throne. For a heartbeat, Robb cannot breathe. His eyes fixed on the words that should have ended with his father's head on a spike, and instead end with chains and defiance. The room goes silent around him as the lords of the Winterfell harvest feast realize what this means. There is no dead wolf to avenge now, no murdered warden whose blood cries out from the steps of Baelor's sept. Instead, there is a father held in open contempt of the gods' judgment, a king and his mother spitting on the very law they claim to defend. In truth, that cuts even deeper. Robb's call to arms changes shape overnight. He is no longer riding south as a grieving son with a sword in hand, but as a commander seeking to free a lord wronged by his captors. His banners still rise, but the words whispered under breath are different. Justice, hostage, treason in the capital. Some of the older lords murmur that this does not need to end in blood if the South can be shamed into obedience by the verdict of the combat. Others are not so gentle. Great Jon Umber slams his fist on the table until cups jump and ale spills, roaring that if this continues, the Lannisters will learn there is only one language the North speaks. Karstark's eyes are flat and cold. His sons bled in the Riverlands even before this. To him, the fact that Ned was proven innocent and still dragged away is all the proof he needs that no parchment, no priest, no king's decree can be trusted. Catelyn moves through this storm like a woman who has been given one last fragile breath. With Ned alive, every thought narrows to exchange. Jaime Lannister is already her mind's answer before they even ride past Moat Cailin. At Riverrun, when the Lannister host presses, she pushes Robb harder, earlier, to strike for a valuable captive at Whispering Wood, to seize the Kingslayer not only as leverage for Sansa and Arya, but as the one coin rich enough to buy Ned Stark's freedom. Yet that same hope complicates everything. In the war councils, when Robb stands over the map with sword tip tracing rivers and roads, some lords glance not at him, but at the empty chair that should hold his father. How can they cry king in the north while Eddard Stark still lives? Judged innocent by the gods and wronged by the Iron Throne. Slowly, a different idea takes shape. Ned as the figurehead, Robb as the sword arm. The declaration that came in a rush in another timeline now stalls, mutates. A few young knights pound the table for a crown, their blood hot. Others urge patience, urging that they first free Ned, present a united front with the Riverlands, then decide if they will break from Stannis' coming rule or bend the knee to a lawful king who might punish the Lannisters for their defiance. Around every fire, the North divides itself into hawks and doves, between those who want to burn Lannisport to the ground and those who think a living Lord Stark can still pull the realm back from the brink. The camps are silent at night, but under that silence, loyalties shift and harden in ways no one fully sees yet. Does Ned's survival bind the North tighter around his name, or does it plant the first hidden fractures that will decide whose orders they follow when the next darker war comes? Broken chessboard, Renly, Stannis, and Lannister countermoves. Those hidden fractures do not stay hidden for long. As word of the trial, of Jaime's fall and Ned's survival spreads across the realm, every claimant and counselor feels the ground shift beneath their feet and starts reaching for a new plan. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon stands over his painted table, candles guttering, eyes fixed on the little carved stag that marks his name. In truth, he has gained something rarer than ships or swords, a Stark who saw the Ledger of Bastards with his own eyes. Ned's living breath is proof. Proof that Joffrey is no king. Proof that Robert's true heir stands here, in this silent, smoky hall. Stannis slowly traces the King's Road with a finger, calculating. If Ned escapes, if Ned is traded, his testimony can shatter any story Cersei spins. Even if this continues as a grinding war, a captured Ned is a prize to be rescued, not avenged. So Stannis orders more ravens, more quiet feelers toward the north and Riverlands, offering law, not charm, and the promise that the man who tried to save Robert's children will stand beside him when judgment comes. Renly reads the same news and smiles. Where his brother sees a witness, he sees a banner. Ned Stark alive in King's Landing is a hostage, yes, but also a bargaining chip he does not yet hold. Renly rides through bright Tyrell pavilions, cloak snapping, speaking softly of rescue. To the river lords he offers the safe return of their warden. To the north he offers something bolder. Bend the knee to the younger Baratheon. And this does not need to end in blood. With Highgarden's gold and knights, with Marjorie's charm and the Reach's grain, he promises a war fought more with feasts and oaths than with burning fields. The room goes silent in more than one lordly hall as they imagine a smiling king who brings Ned home without demanding their sons as hostages. But in the west, Tywin does not smile. Gregor Clegane's head is gone, Jaime's blood stains the throne room, and the Lannister name has been dragged before the gods. Tywin's rage is cold, not loud. He doubles the levies, recalls hard-bitten captains, and sends riders to every vassal still hesitating. If the crown's moral sword has snapped, then steel must rule. He will not trust Joffrey's shrill commands or Cersei's pride. He will rule through fear, through gold, through the simple weight of 20,000 men marching in step. Cersei, trapped in the very city she once owned, reaches for a different weapon. She whispers that Barristan's duel was treason, that the trial was tainted by an old knight's wounded honor and a northern wolf's lies. Septons repeat her words from pulpits, even as she quietly sends gold cloaks to nudge prisoners down stairwells or press quills into shaking hands. A forced confession here, an unfortunate accident there, anything to make Ned's tongue useless before Stannis or Renly can claim it. So the board does not explode, it grinds. Kings gather claims like shields, armies form and reform, and at the center of every whispered plan is one grey-eyed lord in chains, whose next breath might decide which banner the realm believes. Because the first king to control Ned Stark's voice won't just win a battle for the throne. He might win the story of what the throne even is. From Red Wedding to White Walkers, long shadows of a saved Stark, and that story stretches far past thrones and crowns. It reaches all the way to a wedding drenched in blood that may never happen, to a boy at the wall who is not a bastard, and to blue eyes burning in the dark beyond the Frostfangs. First, the twins. With Ned alive, declared innocent by trial, and now Stannis' staunch ally, the North does not stagger leaderless into Walder Frey's hall. Robb rides south, not as a desperate boy king clinging to fading banners, but as the heir of a great lord who still holds Winterfell, whose word carries the weight of the new king's favor. When Catelyn sits across from Lord Walder, the room goes silent for a different reason. There is a Stark patriarch behind her, a Baratheon king above her, and a Lannister threat that has already been broken at Summerhall. In truth, that changes the math for every traitor. Roose Bolton cannot whisper quite so freely when Ned's eyes are still on him. When the Dreadfort's cold ambitions are checked by a living Warden of the North who remembers every late rider and every delayed levy. Walder's spite is still there, but without Tywin's gold and without the certainty that the North will be decapitated in one strike, the Red Wedding becomes less a sure path to power and more a slow, suicidal gamble. If this continues down the same road, any betrayal at the twins is likely smaller, messier, and far less decisive. And it is just as likely that Frey and Bolton bend the knee to Stannis instead of opening their own throats. Far to the north, another truth waits. Jon Snow still takes the black, still stands on the wall, with sword in hand and frozen breath in the air. But the currents that brought him there are different. A realm not shattered by 5 kings can spare grain, men, and steel. Ned can send seasoned knights and hard Karstark spearmen instead of boys and broken men. The Night's Watch is still a shadow of what it was, yet it is not quite so hollow when the wildlings mass and the White Walkers stir. And Ned's secret burns hotter. Stannis is a hard man, but not a blind one. When ravens speak of dead men walking and blue-eyed corpses, the question of rightful rule starts to sound smaller. Under that pressure, with Melisandre's fires whispering of a promised prince, Ned's oaths begin to feel like chains around the world's throat. This does not need to end in blood, he tells himself. If revealing Jon as Rhaegar and Lyanna's son can bind North and South, dragons and stag, into one last shield against the dark. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Cersei's choice to spit on the gods' verdict and cage Ned leaves a scar. The faith remembers. The High Septon who watched a proven innocent paraded in chains preaches softer at first, then louder, about a queen who thinks herself above judgment. The walk of shame, the wildfire in the sept, these things do not vanish, they accelerate. A king who leans on the faith to legitimize his crown cannot ignore their outrage forever. And when the clash finally comes, it tears the capital apart, years earlier. Thread by thread, one jewel in a torchlit throne room has turned. The north is less broken, the south less secure. And on the wall, a young man who thought himself a bastard may soon learn that his name and his duty belong to the entire realm. One duel, many futures, recap, trade-offs, and viewer choice thread. By thread, one duel in a torchlit throne room has turned. And now we can finally see the pattern it's woven. It all began with 3 simple words from a wounded northern lord. Trial by combat. Ned Stark stands beneath the Iron Throne, demands judgment of the gods instead of a false confession, and the room goes silent as Sir Barristan Selmy steps forward, old honor facing the Lannister sword of the realm. Steel meets steel, Barristan faces the mountain, and in truth the outcome is as much about faith as it is about skill. One clean strike, one old knight refusing to yield, and Gregor Clegane falls bleeding on the stones. Pycelle's voice shakes as he names Ned innocent. The faith has spoken, yet the crown will not fully bow. Cersei stalls, claws for loopholes, and Joffrey's claim rots in the eyes of half the realm, even as he still calls himself king. From that moment, everything else bends. The Northern War does not explode in blind rage over a father's execution. It moves slowly, deliberately, with Ned alive to guide Robb's sword. Tywin's legitimacy frays, his banners hesitate, and when his reduced host is broken in the Riverlands, the West learns that backing a false lion can end in blood and exile. Without a murdered Lord of Winterfell, the Red Wedding is no longer a desperate masterstroke, but a needless atrocity few powerful houses are willing to risk. Stannis arrives to a capital already half purged, is crowned with the faith's blessing and Ned's reluctant support. And the game shifts again. Renly still rises and still falls, crushed at Summerhall, while the Reach is torn from the Tyrells and handed to colder, harsher, Florent hands. In the north and on the wall, Jon Snow's name begins to matter sooner. With Ned breathing, with Stannis listening, the truth of his birth has a real chance to reach the right ears before the dead come walking. Change a single breath, and everything shatters into new shapes. If Cersei finds a way to block the trial entirely, if the Hound is forced to stand as champion instead of Barristan, if Jaime is freed in time and ordered to fight for the man he once betrayed, the room goes silent for very different reasons, and the war that follows may be far darker. So now the choice turns to you. Who should have stood for Ned Stark in that hall? Barristan, Sandor Clegane, Jaime Lannister, Brienne of Tarth? And how does that duel end in your version of the tale? Does the mountain sword find its mark? Does Barristan fall? Does this not need to end in blood because Cersei tries to co-opt Ned instead of killing him? If this continues, which branch do you want to walk next? Robb Stark wedding Marjorie Tyrell and binding North and Reach, Stannis taking King's Landing by storm instead of by law, or a world where Cersei accepts the verdict and turns Ned into her unwilling hand. Tell your version in the comments, like if you want more deep dives into these broken timelines. And subscribe so you're there when the next What If in Westeros draws its sword and steps into the light.